Be my voiceover guy, Josh.
Coming this fall.
What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? How are you all doing tonight? Welcome to Faith Unaltered. I am your co-host, Tyler Fowler, with me, the man, the myth, the legend, the old earth. No, I'm just kidding. David Russell, brother. What is up, dude? How you doing?
Man, it's been a hectic week, bro. I mean, working all the time, trying to set up, more stuff for Faith Unaltered this week.
We're booming.
Yeah, man, it has been crazy, bro. Like I have been just going, man. I don't think I've relaxed yet. So
we've got all of August filled. So we've got the rest of
Yep.
August filled, I should say.
Yeah.
We've got almost all of September filled. And we've already started booking shows for October. And so you have been busy, sir. I've been busy as well with Faith Unaltered trying to get all these interviews. And it's just, it's nice to kind of see it get in a groove and really see, just how many people and who really, I don't want to give away too much just yet, but we've got some big names coming. Hugh Ross is coming back on to discuss the flood, but y'all already knew about that. So we haven't really stopped our science, whatever.
Quest.
Yeah, that thing. But we just kind of took a break, a little bit, and we found some more people to talk some more science with us. And so we're going to be discussing that, maybe even have a old Earth, young Earth debate besides Dane and and David. So actually bring some new faces back on, or new faces on to discuss those issues. But with us tonight, we will be going over the debate, the awesome debate that is now released. You guys did that it was Sunday, July 17th, wasn't it, Rob?
Oops. Sorry, I'm muted. Okay.
There you go.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So you debated Rabbi Tovia Singer on the Jewishness of Jesus. Basically, is Jesus the Jewish Messiah? And let me just ask you, just going straight in, Josh, I didn't forget to introduce you, bro. I'm kind of switching it up a little bit, so I'll bring you on in just a second, my friend.
Can I introduce Josh?
Huh?
Can I introduce Josh?
Please. Go right ahead.
Man, the myth. Joshua Davidson, CSG. Boom. Boom. All right.
That's good.
What's CSG?
CSG is the Complete Sinner's Guide.
That was the sister channel to this one from before.
Yep.
I've taken over running at least adding a couple of things and making sure that the steam that we built up with that over the last couple of years doesn't die. But I'm really very excited to see this channel taking off the way that it is, because boy, was that just weighing on me when this was just an idea, and now that it's real, it's like, yes.
Cool.
Yeah, and like you're part of the team too, Josh. So
That's right.
It's not like much has changed. We just added, I think, to everything. With CSG and what Poro was doing, and we just added to it, which I think will make it even stronger.
I think
I feel the privilege of it. I do. I feel that privilege. I really am very pleased to be involved every time.
Yeah. The thing that we all had in common, we're trying to build community, right? And so to expand, it's like Josh always talks about, expanding your map. Well, we're expanding our community. And so that's what I love about Josh taking over CSG. We've actually done a couple things on CSG since Faith Unaltered has started. And I'm actually going to be talking to you about doing some more things with CSG. So together. So that'll be fun. But Rob, my friend, how have you been since the last time we spoke to you? And let me just ask you this from the get-go. Now that it's over, now that you've had the debate with Tovia, what did you think? What was you feeling right before you went on stage with him? I saw you guys hanging out. You posted some Facebook pictures, and y'all looked like you was having, a really fun time talking and engaging before the debate. But what was going through your mind right before you guys went up on stage?
Well, when we were sitting in the back room, it was just the two of us. I guess there were a couple of other people in the room, but so it was a casual conversation, a friendly conversation. So I was pretty relaxed.
Right on.
But then, so it was in a hotel near the Nashville airport. And so when they came and got us, and I guess we can get into this over time, but there was, 5 armed security personnel with the little in-ear things and all that. And they came and escorted us. when we walked out into the room from the back area into the room full of, I don't know, must have been 250, 300 people there. It got this weird vibe of the bigness of the event reared its head, you know.
Nice.
Went from private conversation in the back room, just really relaxed, to wow, okay, everyone's looking at me, and I'm not sure how many people are rooting for my team.
Right. Just complete perspective shift then at that point, right?
Yeah, it was really weird, really weird walking out there, but it was also exciting. You know, it was kind of electrifying. So that was, that's the first time I've done something that big. So it was a really cool experience.
Right on, man. So set the scene for us. This took place in Nashville. What was the name of the hotel that you guys debated at?
Oh, I don't remember. It was one of your big ones, Hyatt or something. It was near the airport. It was, I apologize, I can't even remember the name of the hotel.
No, you're good. So was Rabbi Singer staying at that hotel, or?
I'm not sure. I'm not.
Gotcha.
The promoter picked that hotel. They found they set up the big conference room with all the chairs and stuff. They had everything kind of laid out nice. They had professional video recording and audio and stuff. So there was a crew of people all around. And so when I showed up, I'm just, and I live in Nashville, so this is kind of hometown. Right. So I didn't travel, so it didn't feel like I was going to anything kind of too big. But then when I walked into the back room and there's people setting stuff up, and then Rabbi Singer's right there, and we greeted each other, gave each other a hug. It was a cool experience because I had studied. He and I had chatted several times on Zoom beforehand, and I had studied what he's doing. So it was a little bit of like, imagine it'd be like if I met you, Tyler. It's like, oh my gosh, somebody walked out of the screen and into my real life.
Right. Right. That was, and I know exactly what you're saying because we just got back from vacation going to David's. And so I met David for the first time in person. He lives in Virginia. I live in Indiana. And I know exactly what you mean. It's like he just popped out of the screen. And then before you know it, we're doing a show together, like in person. He's sitting right beside me. It was just the coolest thing ever. Yeah, so I can definitely relate. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, that was cool.
Right on, right on. And so let's David, Josh, if you guys don't have anything, I'll go ahead and jump into what I saw kind of was the big issue. I mean, do you guys want to, I don't know, do you want to give kind of an overview of how the debate went, or do you just want to jump into what I saw was the main problem with
you want to go straight to the punchline? I mean,
I kind of do, really, because
hey, look, like I was telling Rob earlier, I thought he was stellar. I thought he did really well. He presented a historical argument for the resurrection, which I think that, it wasn't addressed. I mean, it's just plain and simple. It wasn't addressed. He got accused of circular reasoning, which that was one of my questions. I was like, Rob, what was running through your head when he mentioned that you were, doing circular reasoning, like you were, reasoning in a circle?
Yeah, I was really excited because it was almost like he was serving up a volleyball I could spike.
Right.
Underhand.
Like, I know where you're going with
there
this.
You go.
And this just comes from having watched a lot of his stuff. And he's got some pretty stout arguments, but that's not one of them. So the idea that the circular reasoning, it just to me, it belayed his he can't see his own bias. You know what I mean? And so I had an opportunity. I didn't spike the ball like I wanted. Like you get really excited and then you whiff on the ball. I felt like I didn't quite get it like I wanted, but I was able at least to make the point. I mean, that's
like as somebody that's seasoned in these debates and stuff. There's I've probably been watching them forever too. You probably have too, but like I noticed it was like this is Rob's like first one. I could tell that about you. You were being very gracious, and you didn't go for the kill, and I was like, he's coming at this like, hey, I'm trying to be respectful, having that dialogue. And that's just the same character you've displayed on our show with Wilbur and so forth. And, all the guys we've talked to in the past, and I was just like, he's sticking to his demeanor. He's sticking to his character. He's not, going. So I'm glad you didn't spike the ball, because you could have looked like you won the debate, but you had already won. And for me, it was really telling that at about 1 hour and 5 minutes, he kind of fell apart to me. From what just from watching these and being experiences is
how do you
that's
mean?
when the
Like,
rhetoric
he got tired or something? What do you mean fell
I
apart?
don't think he got tired. I think his arguments fell apart. He started stammering. He started mentioning things that weren't that you hadn't even talked about in the debate. Like he strayed from, here's my argument to, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that when you're reading this. It didn't become an argument anymore, but a more of kind of like,
defensive.
I'm the talker. I'm the talker. I'm the established guy, which he said at one point that Judaism is established. He just made that assumption. And it really came more of a rhetoric versus argument at that point.
Yeah.
And that's what I noticed. And I was like, dude, Rob's won. I don't even need to watch anymore. I was like, I really don't. But of course I did. But at that point, that's when I think the conversation was, completely dominated by you. But that's just maybe I'm biased because I like you. But no, just
I appreciate that. Yeah, there was
not a problem.
The first couple of weeks after, it took me at least 2 weeks to stop kicking myself, because what I kept having in my mind was the case that I intended to present and the performance I intended to deliver as far as a really convincing argument versus what I actually did. And it was a very big gap. So it took me a long time to say, okay, no one else knew what I intended to do. So let me listen to what other people are saying, how it actually happened. And I feel a little bit better about it now. There was a lot of things that I didn't close, and I would love to tell you that's because I'm such a kind man, but it's actually because I was a little bit caught up in the moment. And I ended up, this is what I've told my friend, like my nephew Griffin, I don't know if he's watching, but he was a debate coach for me. He was a collegiate debate guy. And so he really helped me prep on certain things, but I had a little bit of a different mission than a win, so to speak. My biggest mission was to come away with having represented Jesus well. So
you did that.
That was my thing. But then there were Rabbi Singer is just very masterful communicator. And so he would drop some things. And I would think to myself, I don't want to let that go unaddressed. And so I kind of lost my mission discipline, and I went over and started talking about some other things. So in a sense, I think he was really successful in that and kind of knocking me off my battle plan.
Yeah. And that's one thing I kind of did notice is like, and this is probably why you haven't listened to it yet, is because you get this whenever you debate like that for the first time, and especially whenever you get into these type of debates, and it doesn't ever end. It's like your first one all the time to me,
right?
And it's like you kick yourself because you're like, you run through that mental gymnastic of, I should have said this, I should have said that, I should have did this, I should have that. And I just play it over and over in my head too. So I totally feel you. I totally get where you're coming from on that, brother.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because there was a section. So in the middle, we had the cross exams, right? And then we sat down and we were asking, and I was able to, if you saw that, you guys probably caught that. So what I had done was establish this series of truths in my opening statement. If Jesus was raised from the dead, only God could do it, because only God can raise the dead. And if God raised Jesus from the dead, then he validated him, because God doesn't raise dead prophets. So there was this series of statements. And then during cross-exam, I asked him each of those. Do you believe that only God can raise the dead? Yes, I believe that. Do you? And so my intention in the final wrap-up was to say, I asked Rabbi Singer, he agreed with every piece of my equation. He just didn't like the conclusion. That was where I was supposed to go to, and that would have been my nice big wrap-up with the bow, but missed that opportunity.
And it seemed like to me anyway, since Rabbi Singer, he didn't touch the resurrection, right? But more so, his primary arguments was just exactly like this. What Waite Still is saying is Jesus the promised Jewish Messiah? Answer, no, since he didn't fulfill the earthly role of the Messiah. 1, Jews reunification to the land. 2, the temple rebuilt. 3, world peace, right?
Yep.
And that's the exact same arguments that Rabbi Singer was presenting. He actually brought up, which is, I want to kind of read it here. Actually, I want to go ahead and read it now. But okay. Isaiah 2, which I didn't understand why he brought up Isaiah 2, because this is more so talking about the day of the Lord than it is Messiah. But now I won't read it. But if you go through Isaiah 2, you don't see the word Mashiach. You don't see any kind of anything to do with the Messiah on that. Now, Isaiah 11 is a little different, right? We talk about the root of or the shoot of Jesse coming up. And so let me just ask, since we're already getting the comments and we've already been kind of off track with the questions in the order that I laid them out, apologies. But how do we, right? How do we answer live, TV, I guess, right? But anyway, how do we answer our critics whenever they bring passages like Isaiah 11? The wolf is not laying with the lamb yet, right?
Right.
And there is no world peace right now. How do we answer those questions, Rob?
Well, so that's a little bit of what I tried to get into in the debate.
Right.
And so I just recently saw a little clip from Michael Heiser, which was really interesting because he was talking about, in his opinion, and I never thought of it this way, but I kind of agree with it. A lot of the prophecy in the Bible was not intended to be understood until it's been fulfilled. It's like it's a looking back to go, oh, okay, now you did it that way. Right. And so what part of my explanation, and I think a solid defensible Christian position on those things, because I've heard rabbis say that, and it sounds really good and strong to say, well, look out your window. Where's all the peace, that the Messiah is supposed to bring.
Right.
The case that I made, and here's part of the problem, is it's somewhat complex. There is no pithy little, statement you can make necessarily. At least I haven't thought of one yet that'll wrap it up. But the point is that the promised Messiah, and I brought this up in the debate. So there are multiple views of the Messiah, or multiple pictures painted in the Tanakh of the Messiah. You've got the Messiah ben David, the Messiah ben Joseph, the one coming meekly on a donkey, the one coming riding on the clouds. And what I tried to do in the debate too is describe, well, okay, look, there's different ways we can interpret this. There's not just one Jewish interpretation that says it has to be this way. Right. So the example I gave was that some rabbis started to believe there's going to be two Messiahs. Other rabbis started to say, well, no, and I read sources on this, but well, no, what it is if Israel's righteous, then the Messiah is going to come on the clouds like a conqueror. If Israel's not righteous, then he'll come riding on a donkey. And so my suggestion was, okay, here's a couple different Jewish ways to interpret your own scriptures. Let me add another one. And it doesn't say that these are completely wrong. What it says is, here's another way to look at it. It's one Messiah with two missions. Okay, it's not two Messiahs. Yeah. So that was the case I was trying to lay out. And the case on the Christian side is that, look, he came once riding on a donkey, and he fulfilled some of the prophecies there. But the ones you're looking for, world peace and everything, everyone rushing to Jerusalem to worship the Lord, all that stuff is the second coming. And so the way Christians look at it, and you always get raised eyebrows when you use the phrase, but the already not yet is the concept of eschatology, that Jesus came and he inaugurated the messianic age, but he didn't finish all his work yet. He's coming back. And the New Testament is very clear that he's coming back. So that's my answer to that is, yeah. And I kind of said that. I don't know if it came through on the video, and I felt super bad because it was very unprofessional of me. But he was, when Rabbi was up there talking, he was saying, such and such, we haven't seen any peace. And I said, yet, and I shouldn't have said that, but that's the point though. Yeah.
But it's the truth, right?
Yeah.
It's the very truth. And what's interesting to me is that instead of for me, what I would have tried to do is acknowledge those different interpretations, right? The different Jewish interpretations. And I love how you did that. You bring Jewish sources, not Christian sources, to the table, but Jewish sources showing how rabbis is a Jewish perspective, not the Jewish perspective. Judaism is not monolithic. But the thing that really, really bugged me about it is, instead of dealing with those and why he was right, he brought up you wouldn't like it if I quoted Mormons.
Right.
Are you really comparing the Talmud as a rabbinic Jew? Are you really comparing the Talmud and other rabbis like Akiva, for example, to Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses? To me, it seems like there's a complete category error there. Would you agree with that?
I don't think he noticed what I was trying to point out.
Right.
So, and I say this because in all my studying of his work, I bought his books and I've watched a lot of his videos and such. he has and it's a great joke about, why did God invent Mormons so Christians will know how Jews feel? Great joke, because it's saying, hey, you're reading it all wrong. So he used that joke inappropriately, because I wasn't quoting Christian interpreters of the Jewish scriptures.
Right.
I was quoting the Talmud and rabbis or rabbinic sources for this very reason. So you're right. When he used that joke, it kind of, for those paying attention to the nuance, it kind of misfired, because you're right. He was kind of claiming that his own interpreters, rabbis, have missed the boat on it.
Are not Jewish.
I mean, not only that, but I noticed that where's the idea that we're all interpreters, right? So if you're reading an interpreter, you're reading an interpreter. He said he wanted Isaiah to speak for himself, but you're interpreting what Isaiah is speaking himself. You're doing the same thing. So I don't understand the disconnect there. But the worst thing, I think, when I was doing this, and Tyler, I'm sure you'll agree, is the total lack of addressing the historical arguments you made. Not only the one for the resurrection, which is obviously the big one, and I think has the biggest weight that you brought. I mean, you came out punching, right? I mean, that was it wasn't even addressed. But when you're talking about these ideas, these historical arguments from the rabbis and so forth, the fact that Jews at that time had this messianic, like you said, it wasn't monolithic, which I thought was very clever. You brought that out, and I was like, you know what? I think we get in a little trouble when we systematize sometimes, because I think sometimes we become monolithic, with our systematics, and that's one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, do you think that sometimes our systematics can get in the way of that? But first, I just wanted to comment that, the historical arguments weren't addressed at all. I mean, the fact that those things, those different views existed in the first century. Messiah ben Joseph, I mean, you specifically said it, and Messiah ben David, I mean, how do we, I don't see how you cannot address that.
Right. That's interesting. And I think, so let me kind of share a little bit of credit to her, just, leading up to that, a couple weeks prior to the debate, I was out in Pennsylvania at a Messianic Jewish conference called the Messiah Conference. So it was, I don't know how many people were there, 1,500, 2,000 Messianic Jews meeting at Messiah College in Pennsylvania. So it was a week-long thing. It was very cool listening to a lot of these guys. And when word got around, oh, you're debating Rabbi Singer. Oh, everyone had something to share. Sometimes lunch turned into a 3-hour just back and forth. It was just, I was so blessed that whole week. There's a bunch of brilliant people there. Rabbi Eduardo Arroyo spent a lot of time with me. I was able to meet and chat with Dr. Michael Brown for a little while, which was super helpful. And then also met some people that kind of knew Rabbi Singer from Brooklyn, which is kind of cool. So some of that helped me. And there was a couple guys there, Jonathan and Eric. They have a YouTube channel called Two Messianic Jews. Brilliant young men. And one of them, and I just posted it in the debate on my YouTube channel. In the description, you can find a link to this article that Jonathan wrote that helped me kind of put some important pieces together in the bigger argument that I was trying to portray, which was like you said, it was from a Jewish perspective, because my thought was, he already rejects the New Testament. So let's go and see what the Jewish side, and this is why I brought up all that rabbinic stuff. It's why I brought up Alan Segal and the two powers in heaven, which I think is a pretty powerful piece of evidence, which he did not respond to.
Ad hominem attacks.
I mean, to me, the summary of what he said, and I wish he and I, Rabbi Singer and I, could sit down and just chat, because I really would love it if he would engage with me on that. He kind of just threw Alan Segal under the bus and threw scholarship under the bus, and never addressed whether or not there really was a two powers in heaven theology, which there was, and didn't address how that would impact first century Jews seeing Jesus. You know what I mean? Seeing this person that they thought was the second power in heaven. So it was disappointing for me from an intellectual standpoint that we weren't able to engage on that.
The ad hominem fallacies were big with that one, and it to me it was sad too, because I think whether or not Dr. Segal which I think he has passed away now.
Yeah, not too long ago.
Whether or not he holds to a mythical, view of Daniel, or whether he believes Daniel was written at a certain time, has nothing to do with the fact of all of the work that Dr. Segal put in to proving from their sources, right? I think he even goes into the scriptures, right? With Genesis 19, the Lord rained on fire, the Lord rained on Sodom and Gomorrah fire and brimstone from the Lord out of heaven. But passages like that kind of hint at, as I would describe it, as hint at a Trinity or even a Benitarian model of God, right?
Yeah.
Because I think that's what he proved, is the Jews held to this, I don't know if he called it like a father and son relationship, but there was definitely a Benitarian mind frame within Judaism in the 1st and 2nd centuries. And lo and behold, all of a sudden it becomes really, they are heretics now from the rabbis. Those people who believe in the two powers, they're heretics. Wonder why. Seems the timing of that is just perfect, if you ask me.
Yeah, it wasn't considered heresy till early 1st or early 2nd century. So
Jesus came on the scene.
And there were already issues at that point. So that was an area that I wish that he would have engaged on. There were some other areas too where, honestly, until the whole thing was over, I didn't realize. And afterwards with my wife and my nephew Griffin and stuff hanging out, I'm like, wait a second, he never responded to that. I didn't notice it in the moment,
Yep. So
oh, sorry, Tyler.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, that's just a debate tactic. I mean, the person that starts the debate, the first person, this is just etiquette. This is debate etiquette that I've learned doing Model UN and stuff like this. Is the person that starts the debate is the one that sets the tone. You set the tone. But as a second person, what they have to do now is to try to steal that tone, right? And it seemed like that's what he was trying to do, was trying to stay to his narrative to try to get you lured into changing the tone of the debate, which you didn't do. Naturally, you went back to your arguments. You went back over your arguments. And I thought that was brilliant of you. And I thought that, and not only that, but that, if you weren't trying to do that, God led you to do that. And you did represent Christ well at that point. So Tyler, I'll kick it back.
That's the most important thing. And it's interesting. Some folks, and this is, I guess, the nature of the world today, but I've heard from several people, you were too nice. You guys should have been arguing more. You shouldn't have been so complimentary and all that stuff. And I get in a sense that this is a little bit of a intellectual combat sport. So people maybe wanted to see more blood. But I also, like I said, that wasn't my goal going in. And much to the frustration of Griffin, my nephew, who's like this, he knows all the specifics about debate strategy and how you score points and all this stuff. And so I was a little bit sloppy based on what he was talking about, which would have been would have been quite powerful had I been able to stick with it better. But I think the more important thing was that we had a civil conversation, and I that needs to be modeled more. That I can disagree. I disagree with Rabbi Singer on many things, but I also don't hate the man. He's a really nice guy. We've had some great chats, which is why I just had this sense inside me when we started cross-exam. I want to start with a personal question. What's your favorite bakery in Jerusalem? You know what I mean? So it was a weird thing to ask in a way, but it was also an attempt to set a tone that I'm not here to do a gotcha.
Right.
I'm not afraid of talking about the ideas, but let's also chat a little bit.
Right. Anyway, kind of like that extending of the hand, just
right. Yeah.
It breaks the ice. Yeah, it breaks the ice.
Absolutely.
And
I think
me and Tyler, I mean, me and you talked about this when we were talking with our friends on the Trinity is we have another goal. We're not trying to draw blood. We're trying to make friends, and we're trying to have a continuing dialogue, because ultimately relationships are how you win people. And Rob, you did the right thing regardless. Some people want blood, but Jesus didn't draw blood, But you know what I mean? He asked the question.
He's all of our model, right? Because he was his apologetic was incredible. When he would ask, oh yeah, well, if your animal falls in a well in the Sabbath, you get it out, don't you? So he wasn't afraid of challenging people, but he also, so I was trying to strike that balance because I really did feel like I had brought a strong argument. And I have yet, even in the comments on my YouTube video, I haven't gone through Rabbi Singer's comments on his, but I still have not really heard a response from any fans of Rabbi Singer or opposers of me. I've not heard anyone come back with any, legitimate response. I would love to hear where that might go on some of those arguments, even just the basic argument that I made, even which I was a little surprised at. I was hoping I would at least be able to get Rabbi Singer to say some theory about the resurrection.
Yes.
And he said no theory about it, except that kind of funny thing he said about all the dead bodies in the first century. And,
No, he did actually. He did say something about it. Actually, it was in his opening statement. He actually said, or maybe it was the early rebuttal.
Maybe I missed it.
Yeah. He said something. He quoted C.S. Lewis. And he said, liar, lunatic, or Lord. He did the 3 L's. And
Right.
he said, what about legend? And then he just dropped it. And it wasn't addressed any time after that. What about legend? And that's all he said. And it's like, dude, you can't really be making that argument. As an educated person, Jesus is a historical figure.
Right.
We know this.
Yeah.
What's the best explanation? You just dropped legend, but you didn't justify that claim.
Well,
and that's what that drove me crazy. Well, so that's how I noticed that one. But
with the whole, because we don't have Alexander's the Great's body, that means he rose from the dead. No, nobody ever claimed that Alexander the Great, or was it? If somebody, it might have been somebody else. But regardless,
Caesar.
Just because we don't have their body, that's not the claim. He never claimed, or whoever he was talking about, never claimed to rise from the dead. The historical, the staple, and I love, Rob, how you said, they all knew where the tomb was. All they would have had to do was to pull the staple out of the Christian religion. All they had to do was prove a body. And instead of engaging in the argument, mockery was the tool that was used. And it just, man. And so I would love to get, even, a Jew or anyone really that is opposed to the resurrection to hear the argument. Is it going to be the swoon theory? Is it going to be the disciples stole the body? Because that's what the first century Jews were saying, tell them the disciples stole the body. That proves without a shadow of a doubt that the body wasn't there.
Yeah.
Right.
They paid someone off to sell the story. Yeah.
Exactly.
Talk about legend. There's your legend right there.
Exactly. But Josh, man, you were going to say something. We cut you off. Go ahead, brother.
No, it's okay. You guys are being prolific, and I'm trying not to interrupt as much as possible because this is all going really well. I was going to say, I felt like the biggest advantage you have, in especially in the opening statement, is this kind of holistic, zoomed out view of let's look at humanity, let's look at prior to Christ, let's look at after, and see this impact. You like. That's another thing that he didn't touch, I think.
No.
Really, like at all.
I don't remember him offering an explanation for the fame of Jesus.
Yeah.
And you know what? So I said all that. For those of you who've seen the debate, I did this big kind of section on Jesus being the most famous and influential figure in history, yet he has no army. He had no, nothing that you would consider worldly credentials. And I was prepared for his response to that. And someone's brought it up to me subsequently, and I was able to use my response. But someone brought up, what about Muhammad? He's just as famous, and and so on. And so the response to that, for those of you wondering what about Muhammad, isn't he just like Jesus? No, Muhammad was a warlord who had military and social power within his lifetime. And Christianity, now we can talk about the somewhat storied past of the Christian church after it became the legal religion of Rome. But those first 3 centuries when Christianity spread like wildfire, it was illegal. You would get killed for it. It was very countercultural. It was not spread by the sword. It was not spread by politics or anything. And so how do we account for that? That's a pretty staggering historical fact.
Right.
Yeah. It's the reverse, really, of what you would expect, right? You've got the illegal, the illegality of it, right?
Yeah.
Jesus is not a military leader like Muhammad was. A lot of people don't know that, but it's kind of split. I don't know, whenever it comes to years, right? But if you look at Islam, whenever Muhammad was getting it started, the first half, people laughed at the guy. It wasn't until he actually started killing people and taking and making people convert by force that Islam really started growing. So,
yeah. I mean, it's not an apples to apples comparison.
Exactly.
The same thing. Yeah.
Exactly. So I want to kind of transition now a little bit into and David brought it up a while ago, but this whole concept of circular reasoning. And my question is this, Rob, what did you think of Rabbi Singer's objection to Christians engaging in circular reasoning when it comes to using the New Testament to validate the truth of Christianity?
Yeah, I mean, that's a silly argument that doesn't, it caves in on itself, because the argument is, well, Christians believed Jesus was the Messiah because the New Testament told them so, but the only thing that ever told them about Jesus was the New Testament. So this circular reasoning, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as I tried to make the point, the same thing's true of Judaism. You believe that well, here's the big thing. They believe, and I heard several folks make this specific argument after they came up to the table. They were very kind about it, but some Jewish folks said,
yeah,
the difference is, they told me, it was a national revelation. God revealed himself to the nation of Israel, and the Jewish people have been an unbroken people ever since. So my great-grandfather was at Sinai. My grandfather was at Sinai. This is the national history. And how do you convince an entire nation of a fabricated history? And the thought about that, and I've got a video coming out on this shortly, is that, well, wait a second, you can't literally trace, it's not a historical fact that you can trace all the way back to Sinai. Jews today don't even know, most Jews don't even know what tribe they came from, much less are able to trace a family history back to Moses, right? So now I have to give this disqualifier because people are easily offended these days. I believe God revealed himself to Israel as a nation. I don't doubt that fact, but I believe it because the Torah says it, not because it's any sort of verifiable historical fact, right? So now we've got the belief in the national revelation, which therefore proves the Torah true, but the only place you know about the revelation is in the Torah. It's the identical circular reasoning. Now, I say that not to cut down the Torah and not to cut down the Jewish people or the national revelation that happened, because I accept all that, but all I'm doing is cutting down the silly idea of circular reasoning. And here's what's interesting too, and I'll put a challenge out there. I see a few folks typing some interesting comments, and I've not heard anyone rise to this challenge yet. Rabbi Singer hasn't been able to, in anything I've seen. Any argument you have against the validity of the New Testament works equally well against the Old Testament, the Tanakh. So every argument, and that's a video that just came out yesterday on my channel talking about that. Every argument that he has come up with that I've heard so far from Rabbi Singer works equally well. Well, we did those unknown authors. Okay, well, same thing with Samuel, and we've got this incredible elapsed time between the events of Jesus and when it was written down. Oh, really? Well, how many years between Abraham and Moses? Okay, so
that's right.
We've got the same thing there. We've got all of those types of arguments against the New Testament work equally well against the Old Testament. So I'm curious if anybody has an argument that actually works against the New Testament but doesn't undermine the Tanakh at the same time.
And I think you can. I think you can actually do it in reverse. I think you can have more credibility with the New Testament than the Old, because of it's so much closer, and we have so much more evidence in favor of the New Testament. And so I mean, we've got
Oh, sorry, but here's the irony in what you're saying, because what you're saying is true. If you can conclude that the New Testament is valid and authentic scripture, right? The New Testament validates the Tanakh. So you get the Tanakh thrown in, because there's something like 280 direct citations and all kinds of references. So if you do get the New Testament, which you would think, well, Christians certainly accept that. And then that tells us, oh, when Jesus says scriptures, what's he talking about? The law and the prophets and the Psalms. Okay, well, now I accept all this, all the Old Testament as well. Yeah.
And that's the thing. And that's the thing is, and that's the only part that I would say, and I'm glad Tyler brought this up as we're transitioning, because I think that, like, I was wishing you would go into the process more, because the process is, we have it's not circular reasoning at all. We're examining truth claims.
Right,
We're
exactly.
examining 4 different. It's not like we just get this book. It's not our book. There's several books. It's a library. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And each of these are separate truth claims. Each gospel are separate truth, are testimonies about Jesus, and we're looking at those. And the reason we can say that God revealed himself to Israel on Sinai, or that God revealed himself in Jesus Christ, is because we've examined those evidences. We have come to the conclusion that those are accurate, they're true, they best fit the data, like you were saying with the resurrection and the minimal facts. I mean, they best fit everything. And I think that the case is so strong, it's almost unreasonable to deny.
Yeah, after a while, I mean, the more you look into it, the more you start saying, okay, what kind of wacky theory do I need to come up with to try to explain all this stuff away? Because it is really overwhelming.
Yep.
It's certainly circumstantial. We don't have definite, and you very rarely do anyway in history. You're talking about issues of percentages and probabilities when you're talking about history, but what are the chances? And this goes to the heart of my opening statement about the fame and enduring fame and influence of Jesus, which, by the way, that comes from several places. One of them being J. Warner Wallace's book, Person of Interest. It kind of inspired me to think in those terms. And so I just like to give credit where it's due, but that's a really good, it's entirely different thing. But when I read it and I was in my mind preparing for the debate, I took some of those other things. I'm like, wait a second, what a great point,
And I'll just say this too, for any Jew watching or who will watch, be careful, be very, very careful of the double standard. Because if you, and even Rabbi Singer pointed this out during the debate, right? He alluded to, being careful of this double standard. And yet then at the same time, he did it. He committed this fallacy multiple times, like we were talking about earlier. If you can try to discredit the New Testament, then take that exact same argument and apply it to the Old Testament. If you can do that, then, I mean, in my opinion, you don't need to be Jewish. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. Like that's it's intellectual dishonesty, if you ask me, to be
or it's honest. So yeah, it's intellectual dishonesty if he's aware of it, or it's just blind bias that he's not aware of. And sometimes what's the old analogy? It's like trying to explain water to a fish. Sometimes it's so all around you that you don't even see it as anything separate from yourself.
Right.
Now, Rabbi Singer's a fairly intelligent guy, and he's read a lot. He knows New Testament scripture quite well. So it would be hard to think that he was completely unaware of that. And we all have biases, but yeah.
I think there's also a lack of methodology. So like there's a lack of method. Like when you totally ignore the historical sciences and how we do history, that can be a problem in your interpretation. If you ignore historical context, that go into your interpretations, there's a problem with that. And I think that by and large, I see a lot of that, and I pick it up. But one thing I was thankful for, and you can listen to this debate, it's in our archives, was in my discussion, the guy that I was talking to actually said, I think Jesus is very possible could have been the Messiah to the Gentiles. I was flabbergasted.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
So I was like, what does that mean? You know? So he didn't deny everything like Tovia does.
Well,
it was totally different.
That's
it was very interesting.
When you get into Jewish thought, which is a big part of, I think, my attempt at least, was to show that it's not monolithic, and that, like you said, that's a really interesting theory. And you've got Pinchas Lapid, who thought, no, I think he really was resurrected. I just don't think that means that he was the Messiah. Yeah. And I think that means that he was a sign of the next age or something. I forgot exactly how Lapid puts it, but there are legit other ways to interpret it. That's, because I don't know if you've seen a lot of what Rabbi Singer will say, well, Jews don't believe that. Jews don't believe this, and that would be like me saying Christians don't believe in infant baptism because I believe in believers' baptism, So there are various ways that you can still be an authentic Christian or an authentic Jew, but these are secondary, tertiary issues that maybe you have different opinions on, you know.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I'm sure, you know, in defense of the rabbi, it's probably part of his debate tactic too. It becomes easier from a rhetoric standpoint to present this monolithic thing and just say, no, as a whole, we reject that. And I'm sure if he was pressed, he would, you know, admit to the nuance there.
And I think it shows, because if you go back and listen to the debate, you see him doing that multiple times, right? Even though whenever you address it, he'll keep saying, well, the Jewish interpretation of this, or the Jewish perspective is this. Right. And so my question is, so since we're talking about the resurrection, Rob, let me ask you, because I do believe we have a couple of those of the Jewish descent watching right now. Where in the Tanakh would you go to show the prophecies of Messiah rising from the dead?
Here's what's interesting. I'm going back to what I mentioned earlier about Heiser and how sometimes prophecy. So here's actually, let me do it this way. This is kind of a fun way to describe it, because this is what J. Warner Wallace talks about in Person of Interest. If you guys aren't familiar with him, he's an apologist who's also a homicide detective. So what he'll do is, when he unveils the logical thinking, the way he tries to unpack riddles and, you know, mysteries, he talks about clues, he talks about procedure, whatever. But one of the things he says is, when a detective goes onto a scene, right, and something happened, there'll be some really obvious clues that can identify the suspect, fingerprints, blood type, that kind of thing, DNA, right? But he said, then there's other things that are like a button. What if you find a button at the crime scene? Is that part of the crime? Did that belong to some? You catalog it, but you don't know until later, until you've got a suspect in mind. That's when you can now compare that button and go, well, we looked through his closet and his shirt's missing a button just like this. So there's the idea in the Tanakh that there are things that I can look back on as a believer in Jesus and say, that was a button. Jesus, there's a clue there, you know. And Rabbi Singer, who rejects the New Testament, will look at that and go, no, what are you talking about? For example, he likes to talk a lot about Isaiah 7:14 about the virgin, right?
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting that the Jewish word used there, Alma, is not the specific Jewish word for a virgin. And so, so from his perspective, he's like, what are you talking about? They would have said Betula, you know, whatever. So, but the point is, the way the author wrote that scripture, in hindsight, now that we have a person of interest that we can compare it to, we find out that, well, maybe he chose that word because it's got kind of a dual meaning. Because first of all, a young woman of marriageable age in ancient Israel, if she's not a virgin, then she's a harlot. You know what I mean? So there's that point of it. And there's things like Psalm 22:16, right? The lions, some of it say, they pierced my hands and feet, which Jesus or David talking about being persecuted, right? Some of the translations say, you know, it pierced my hands and feet. The dogs surround me and they pierced my hands and feet. And so Christians would say, well, pierced. Hey, that's a, you know, he'll argue, well, no, it says lions at my hand, like a lion at my hands and feet, you know?
Right.
So he'll see it in a different way. I see it one way, and I'm biased towards Jesus, right? Because that's what it's my personal conviction. But now when I look back at that too, I can also say, well, wait a second. What's the lion doing with your hands and feet? Is he not mauling them? Is he not, you know, wounding your hands and feet? And don't we have very clear Jesus with, you know, feel my wounds? And, you know, I mean, so to me, even if I grant the, what do we want to call? I'll say traditional Jewish interpretation, it still is messianic to me, you know, and that's the Psalm that Jesus quoted from the cross, right? You know, my God, why have you forsaken me? Yeah. So in hindsight, I look at that and I say, so to answer your question, where would I go in the Tanakh? I'd go lots of places. I would start at Isaiah 53. I think that's a knockdown, drag out. Because there's even rabbinic sources for it. And I didn't quote as many as I had planned to, but I have a dozen sources of people who read the Messiah into Isaiah 53. Let me not just say persons, Jewish rabbis and thinkers. Now they would not say that Jesus fit the Messiah mold as Jews. They would disagree with that, but they'll also disagree with Rabbi Singer that Isaiah 53, he says Isaiah 53 has nothing to do with the Messiah.
Right.
You know, I disagree with that.
Well, I mean, it was a trend. It was a trend. It was a view that it actually did. I mean, we can, Otherwise, why come up with the whole term Messiah ben Joseph and use Isaiah to justify it?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
But I do have one question for you that kind of had my wheels turning a little bit, because as Christians, we oftentimes say we have to read things in context, right? So when Toby brought up Zechariah 9:9, for example,
oh yeah,
right? And he
Asked about the
claimed
next
that,
verse.
yeah, and he's like,
Mhm.
we leave out stuff like that when it comes to prophecy. What do you say to that?
I say that's in under the already not yet.
Yep.
Verse 10, I'm not denying that, and I haven't ignored it. And it's not like what he'll often accuse Christians of is no one ever knows that verse. Well, what if we do know it and we think that's what he's doing in his second coming, right? So, and also there is a moving goalpost when it comes to messianic prophecy, in that when someone has what they think is a really strong argument, they'll argue for a very literal interpretation of a passage, and then they'll back off and start talking about, well, that's prophecy. That's an interesting genre. It's a lot of metaphor, and so people will sometimes move the goalposts. And my opinion is that all prophecy, unless it's specifically spelled out for us in Scripture, is pretty enigmatic, and we have to leave room. I don't want to be dogmatic about some of those things. Like I saw someone post about, well, the Messiah was supposed to come before the temple was destroyed, and they're quoting Daniel 9 that says that the city will be destroyed and the temple will be destroyed when the Messiah comes. Well, I read it that way, but also it also says that flooding will be a major issue in the destruction of the city. And so, did we see flooding? Do we take that literal? Don't we? So I take the same tack with Zechariah 9:10, which is saying this is a messianic passage. God will fulfill it how God's going to fulfill it. And hey, it turns out, according to Jesus, who I believe, and the New Testament authors, the messianic age has begun, and verse 9 is fulfilled, and verse 10 is the second coming.
Well, here's the thing. I just want to read Zechariah 9:10. I will remove the chariot from Ephraim and the war horse from Jerusalem, and the battle bow will be removed. Then he will announce peace to the nations. His dominion will be from sea to sea and from the Euphrates River to the ends of the earth. Has not peace been announced to the nations? I mean, that's the gospel. This is what exactly we're talking about, and this is part of the already not yet, right? Yes. Do we still see wars? Do we have rumors of wars and all of this destruction? Absolutely. But again, the challenge and you brought this up during the debate, Rob, is show me in the passage, in the Tanakh, anywhere in the Tanakh, show me where it absolutely says the Messiah can't come a second time. Because if that's true, if he does this whenever he comes back, then the prophecy is fulfilled, my friend, exactly as our Zechariah 9:10 is written. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. And I want to piggyback. Let me just piggyback off that real quick, Tyler. And I think all you guys will agree. The prophecies concerning the Messiah, it was progressive. And the whole notion, the whole development historically was progressive. It was a progressive revelation. Absolutely. And then the Messiah came.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Even in the Tanakh, we see God progressively revealing, and that's kind of the argument that you can bring. Is like, well, when God flooded the earth, did he later say that he was going to give the law at Sinai? No, he revealed that when he revealed it, because we're humans and we're on a need-to-know basis, right? But God had it planned from the beginning. You see the little hint in Genesis 3:15, right? Oh, something's going to happen. We don't know what it was, and God didn't tell us what it was. But over time, then
you see him. Then you start seeing him being covenantal, right?
Yeah.
You start seeing him being covenantal, with Abraham, and then Noah, and then Abraham, So it's just,
and when you have those promises, you go, okay, through Abraham, all the families of the earth will be blessed. Oh, that's cool. So what does that mean? You know what I mean? So you start going, God's giving us hints.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's really I'm so glad you brought that up. I just want to sidestep just for a second, but through you, the sand as the seashore, right? We all know this. Your descendants will be as the sand as the seashore. Your descendants will be like the stars in the sky. And Rabbi Singer actually has the audacity to sit there and say, well, if your religion is comprised of half of the world, then you probably have a problem. no, are you forgetting your own scriptures at that point, right?
Yeah.
We are Abraham's descendants through faith. And I'm not trying to be mean. Please,
No, yeah,
don't take that the wrong way, right? I'm really not trying to be mean. But at the same time, you uphold the Tanakh, which we all do, right? I think sometimes Jews forget that the Tanakh is our scriptures as well, right? Like we love them. But this is what your scriptures, this is what our scriptures say, and I just thought that was I don't know, it kind of blew my mind, but we're winding down.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
a
Robert.
quick comment on that,
Please,
because
please.
he said that statement in his closing argument.
Yes.
And I wanted so bad to get up, because what he was talking about was the righteous remnant of Israel, right?
Right.
And I still saved 7,000 for myself, God says. And so there's the expectation, and he laid it out better than I just did, but there's the expectation that the true believers in Israel, the true Jewish believers, will be a small number, right? Until the end times. And what had occurred to me, because I had just been at the Messiah conference, was that what if the righteous remnant are those Jews who have placed their faith in Yeshua? Right. That's your righteous remnant. And what a small percentage they are of the larger community of Jewish people throughout the world,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I'm not saying that's the case. It just popped up in my head that,
I wish you would have got a chance. I thought it was kind of I don't know, not really a low blow, but I think that was timed really, really well. Strategically is the word I'm looking for in his closing statement. But I want to ask you this, Rob. We're getting down. I know you said you had to bounce at the hour 30 mark, and I want to really give you a chance to discuss this because you didn't get a chance to do it during the debate. Sure. And so this concept of the criterion of embarrassment when it comes to the eyewitness testimony of Jesus's resurrection by women that convinced Jewish historian theologian Pinchas Lapid of the truth of that claim. What would you like to say concerning this point?
Okay, for those who aren't aware, there's two things. There's the general historical criterion of embarrassment, but there's the way that Rabbi Singer brings it up. And so let me answer those both at the same time if I could. So there's actually a video I saw of him where he was talking about that, and he completely sidestepped the actual argument and took it into a different place. And so his argument was he basically ended up sort of casting aspersions about crazy claims that are made by women, and saying that he was actually debating whether that. So the idea is that, I apologize, I'm being a little bit scattered. The idea is in the first century Judaism, actually probably well beyond Judaism, a woman's testimony was not to be accepted, was considered less than reliable. And so the idea is if the apostles and the writers of the New Testament were writing a myth to try to convince their fellow Jews or their fellow anybody's that this really happened, what they wouldn't do is have women be the first to discover the tomb empty, because their testimony was not reliable, right? So the fact that historians look at this, not just in this particular instance, but in general, if someone in antiquity includes something in their story that actually hurts their case, it makes it more valid, not more valid, but it lends credibility, because why would someone in a fictitious story add a detail that undermines their story? Mm-hmm. Right. So it's assumed again, historians are not about actual fact. It's about probabilities and such, but it would then be assumed that that fact that you added that was embarrassing to you, that undercut your own story, is probably true. More likely true than not true, because of the fact that you included it, and it tells the historian and the reader that my goal wasn't to glamorize myself or create a myth. I want to tell you what really happened because it was amazing,
Right. It's kind of like the same with Mark. Mark adds a little detail about a little boy being naked, right, and running from or not the priest, but the centurions and the Roman soldiers. I think he adds that little detail to say, hey, this was me. You know what I mean? I was there at that time. But yeah. I digress.
Well, so I was going to say, though, for those
who go ahead.
I'll be quick here, but on Rabbi Singer's argument, what he'll do is, when he's responding to this, he won't respond to the historical criterion and what it means for the New Testament. He'll start talking about the truthfulness of the claim that the testimony of women is unreliable.
Right.
And that has nothing to do with the point, whether or not the testimony of women is reliable or not. So he's basically saying, he takes this kind of funny, I don't know, I find him entertaining and winsome, but he takes this idea, hey, if it's true that the testimony of women is unreliable, then you should follow that, and if it's not true, then he tries to say something like, well, if that's not true, then what claim could ever be considered false, is kind of what his line of argument. And you can see how that shifts everything over here, and it doesn't really address the idea that, hey, there's some credible historical evidence within the text itself that lends weight to it being true.
Yeah, it's a whole, it's a whole disregard for the methodology of how we come to know history,
Yeah.
And I'm just going to say this outright. If we can't trust these historical methods that we have established over years, I think there's up to at least maybe 125 of them, most of them minor, but Criterion embarrassment is a big one. And if we're just gonna forsake those, we might as well forsake what we've learned about history within the last 500 years. Everything we've disregard it all, because we can't know anything from history at that point. And we can apply this to up to the video age, almost, and even into the video age, we can start being extreme skeptics when it comes to it. And I think that it was better for him to ignore it than to address it, because I don't think he could have addressed it, in my opinion. Because for me, as somebody that my favorite topic is history, the historical arguments. I think they carry a lot of weight. I think we can know the past. Yes, it's probability, but to me, almost like, what is not? You know what I mean?
Right.
Almost. I'm like Trent Doherty when it comes to, I'm a probability guy, So, but this is where I think it's strong. And like I said, I think we have to ignore and disregard all of history if we can't accept some of these major principles of historical methodology.
Right,
guys. We've got about
it's a combination of evidence over time. You get this probability plus this plus this plus this, and all these things start adding up, and it starts to paint this very realistic, believable picture.
Right. We've got about 20 minutes left, and so
okay.
We've got about 20 minutes left, and so I did promise that we would get to some audience questions. And so if you have a question for Rob or myself or David or Joshua, I'm going to hand it over to you here in just a second, brother, but go ahead and post them in the comments below. Also, gal, please make sure, if you like this content, please make sure to give us a thumbs up, give us a little heart if you're watching it on Facebook, and share. We're trying to get this out to as many people as possible, and just because we want to build the kingdom of God. And I think this is one of the ways that we do that. So please share it. Please give us a thumbs up, leave us a comment. And if you've got a question for Dr. Solberg, please post them in the comments below. Josh, go ahead, brother.
First of all, I am excited to be part of the conversation at all, but I really deeply, and this is something that I was going to say also earlier, but it kind of faded backwards. So I'm gonna jump back to something that we had mentioned earlier. Yeah. Your demeanor during that entire debate was very calm and confident, at least in the seeming. You might not have felt the confidence that you were exuding, but you really did keep your attitude in a place where I felt the confidence was something that gave you an advantage in the way that you were able to speak, in the way that you're able to formulate your responses. But especially that holistic view of your opening statement was very impactful. And I like the emphasis that you placed on both Jesus's impact on the individuals that he met, but also on the church that was formed after his departure, and the echo throughout history of the absolute remarkable, there's no way you could have guessed. There's no way you could have guessed the kind of impact that was going to just echo throughout all of history, right? Like you had pointed out that there were other Messiah figures that had claimed that same status, and yet when they died, because they died, right? Jesus died. That's where the commonality ends. That right
Exactly,
there is where the commonality ends. And I don't feel like he ever took that seriously enough to make that right response. But that was something that really stood out to me. But something else beyond this kind of historical notation, or like the social and political and artistic and individualistic kind of impact that he had throughout the echoes of history, but also going backward, that you can see through what we call Christology, the way that he impacted it's almost like he changed the way the past looks by existing and teaching and dying and resurrecting this presence that he had, and the claims that he made actually brought out a richer depth to the scriptures that were in the past from before him, that I don't think I just don't know. I don't know that that's noticed quite as much as it really should be. Like even the images that are present in the layout of the temple, and the organization of the tribes in the wilderness when they were setting up their camps, and the narrative patterns that happen within Exodus as a whole, or even in Genesis, let's say, throughout the garden, and the way that, like, the tree of the garden, and like there's so many things. Like for me, I love the symbolism of the scripture. It's just got such a depth to it. And even if you were to try to answer every textual argument, I don't think you even started to scratch the surface of how much Messiah is written on every wall.
Right. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So true.
Yes.
I think I would be really curious to see the way that somebody who rejects Messiah, or at least Jesus as Messiah, would be able to combat some of the deeper elements, even imagistically, of the way that Christ is directly represented throughout the scriptures, and then his life and death and resurrection seems to fill the space, like, completely, from top to bottom.
You only see that in hindsight, right?
Yeah, he's the meaning of heaven and earth, and he makes these crazy claims, and then we see, like, how I'm sorry, I'm flabbergasted as to how you would get beyond, like, oh well, I can make a textual argument. It's like, okay, well, this is an interpretive difference. What about the depth of God's own, like, revealing of himself throughout nature, or any of these other things? Like I said, I think, like, even if you made a good textual argument, I don't think you've even scratched the surface.
Yeah, very true.
Right on. All right, we do got some audience questions, and Philip Rice has the first one. Question: is Rabbi Singer as disarming in private and as hard to pin down as he is in the debate?
That's an interesting question, because it's two different arenas of discussion. So I wasn't trying to pin him down on anything in our discussions. He is. So what was interesting, when we would chat, we had a lot of personal connection. I've done some ministry work for pregnancy crisis centers. He's done the same thing. We obviously were both on the same side of the equation for as far as being pro-life, wanting to help people. There's all kinds of personal connections, and I think that's true of all Jews and Christians. I think that's a beautiful thing. And so we talked more in the areas of commonality when we would sit down and chat, and things like, oh, hey, he's flying over, he's going to visit his grandkids, and then you go, oh yeah, he's a grandpa. Oh, that's kind of cool,
Yeah.
So you start just seeing the man. And so yeah, he's very charming, very kind. He's been nothing but kind and friendly to me. Nothing underhanded. I can't tell you how many times I was warned, you better record the event yourself, and he's going to try this, that, and the other thing. He tried nothing. He was who he said he was going to be, and awesome. and so I would count him as a friend. I don't know if he'd feel the same. I would count him as a friend. I like the guy. We disagree on theology and on Jesus and all that. So, but there was no pinning him down, which is because there really wasn't an attempt, and he wasn't attempting to pin me down either. Matter of fact, he showed a lot of interest. That's why he asked, at the debate, is your small group here? Because I had told him about my small group that we're praying for you, and he was almost, what's a small group? It was a concept he didn't know about, and I'm like, well, when you're in a huge church, Anyway, so those are the types of things we talked about in person.
Nice. It's kind of like Josh and I, talked about a while back. I know we brought it up before on Faith Unaltered and even CSG. We tend to forget that, especially whenever we're interacting with people online, that behind that icon there is an actual person. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so that's really easy to, especially whenever you disagree on something and you're in a formal debate at this point, right? It's hard to keep those things in perspective, right? Yeah, he is a grandpa. Yeah, he is flying back to Israel, the next day. And so I think that is something we all, especially interacting online, to keep in mind is remember that is a person made in God's image on the other side
who God
of that
loves.
screen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
And Tyler, I think that's one of the things that me and you even talk about is that the idea of relational apologetics is that there's real people.
That's
there,
right.
That's right. That's so important.
That's right. Philip asked another question here. Do you feel like his personality took you off track a little?
Not his personality, because his debate personality, as opposed to his behind the scenes, we all have that. When he was on, it's like two UFC fighters getting in the ring, right? And maybe they even train together, but they try to punch each other's lights out, and then you give the big bro hug at the end. So it was when we were in the ring, when we were in the arena, and he was doing his thing. It was really cool because I had watched so much video of him that I felt comfortable. I knew, I bet he's going to say this thing. And, here's this thing he does where he speaks in Hebrew and, calls people Kindla and all that stuff. And I kind of like that. I'm a little bit of a fanboy in a sense, but it wasn't the personality that threw me off. It was sort of the bigness of the moment that threw me off. Having hundreds of people staring at you. And that was an interesting thing that I didn't anticipate at all, was when I wasn't speaking and I was sitting at the table and looking around the room. There was a lot going on. Looks I was getting, and you know what I mean? And it, okay, hold on, I got to be listening to what he's saying, So there's a little bit of the bigness of the event, just because I'm not as experienced. So that's what kind of pulled me off my game a little bit.
I got you. I us being both in, have played instruments and been in bands on stage, I can see how that would relate. You're trying to listen, and Josh as well, trying to listen to what's going on, but then looking out at the crowd, and it's just it's overwhelming. It really can be overwhelming.
Thank God for floodlights.
Real. You cannot see them. This isn't really a question. I'm not sure why it started. David, did you start this one? Let's see. Jews believe in up to 100 gods in the Godhead.
Oh no, that was me.
What that's about.
Oh, Josh.
I was starring that because I was going to ask if anybody knew what he was talking about.
I have no idea what he's talking about.
Not a clue.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I didn't know where that was coming from, and I didn't know. I was like, where in the world would you have gathered something like that? So I thought maybe that was relevant to something that I had missed in the discussion.
If they want to share their source, maybe.
Yeah, that would.
Right. Yeah. Let's cite some sources here.
Oh, real? Well,
I'd like to know about that.
Right. I do have one more question for you, Rob, as we are starting to wind down now. Is there anything during the debate or during this video, this interview, that we haven't discussed that you want to bring to the table in closing?
That's a tough question. On the debate, I had as much unsaid as I actually said. I left lots of stuff unspoken about, not just the wrapping up, but there were a bunch of other lines of argument that I had intended to bring that I didn't. And thankfully, one of my dear friends from my small group afterwards, when I was just starting to kick myself, said, "Hey, you said everything the Lord needed you to say today." And I went, "Okay, I'm going to believe that because there's nothing I can do now." So there's lots. And I'll tell you, for those of you interested, I did a lot of research and understanding of Rabbi Singer's positions on many different issues. And I'm starting to put out videos about that. I'm using clips of him in his own words, because I don't want to feed him, or I'm also using, in some cases, quotes from his books. But these are kind of lines of argument I didn't get to explore. So most of them Many of them are not even things we talked about in the debate. But I just want to let folks know that there's a very interesting, and I'm honestly, I'll just be vulnerable here and let you know, I feel like there's a door opened for me. My background, as you guys know, ministry-wise, is really in the Hebrew roots and in whatever you want to call it, Torah observant Christianity, Torahism, whatever. And so what that has done is first of all caused me to fall in love with the Tanakh as part of the foundation of my own faith, to understand the Old Testament better. But it also, God had moved me into a position of being more prepared to debate Rabbi Singer than I thought I was, because I had studied a lot of this stuff. And so I feel like the debate itself has been a little bit of a lever to open another area of that's very much in the heart of what I study, which is the biblical roots of Christianity. And then the debate itself has given me a bigger platform, more views, more people coming to my page, wondering what the heck I'm all about. Why did Rabbi Singer pick me? All that kind of stuff. So, I kind of laugh a little bit, and I hope it's the case. We'll see what God wants to do with it. But maybe God had me debate him because he's using Rabbi Singer's platform to, shed some light on some of the things that I want to bring to the conversation that I think people haven't thought about yet. In the way that I think about things, which is not always right, by the way. But I'm just saying the arguments I brought at that debate, if any of you have seen any of Rabbi Singer's other debates, I don't know anyone else who's taken the same approach that I did. Not that it was necessarily better, but it was different. And I think different makes people think. Wait a second, I never thought about Jesus as how he echoes down wait a second, I'm sitting in this room tonight because of Jesus, but I don't even believe in him. So some of those ways of helping people to think about it, I feel like that's something that I'm hoping that the debate will be a catalyst for that in my personal ministry.
Absolutely. And yes, and we will link to that debate in the description of this video. As soon as we release this, I'll go ahead and go back, copy and paste it. And if you want to see, if you haven't seen the debate with Professor Solberg and Rabbi Singer, oh man, you got to, because you have no idea what we've been talking about this entire time. And for not wanting to misquote anyone, it was not Alexander the Great, it was Julius Caesar that Robert had brought up. So I don't want to misquote anyone. Well, we've got about 4 minutes left. I've got one more question that I think is absolutely relevant to this. I do want to ask you, Rob, just real quick, and then I'll hand it over to David and Josh. But after taking some time to reflect and meditate on this debate now, a month later, a month after the fact, what is the main thing you took away from this debate?
Wow, that's a tough question. The main thing.
Yeah, it could be an argument that he brought to the table, something that he said, something that you said. But no, however you wanted to find that.
One of the things I took away was so I told you I got some grief from people that wanted to see blood, right? They were saying, you were too nice to each other. Well, for everyone that said that, many more people said, hey, I'm not a Christian, but I appreciate how you conducted yourself. So I think there's a very important interpersonal relationship between Jews and Christians. What we need to do is love them, but not cede any ground on Jesus being their Messiah. And so I feel like the debate turned out to be a pretty good model of that, where we had people, there were some good ideas on both sides going back and forth, but it wasn't divisive and there wasn't rancor and all that kind of stuff. So
that's good.
What I'm hoping that it gets taken away from this in the long run is that that was a very civil and uplifting debate in terms of respectfulness. And Rabbi Singer and I are both made in the image of God. And so there's no reason we can't respect each other as men, even though we disagree. And like I said, at the end of the debate, I'm still praying that he's going to be a modern day Saul of Tarsus and that he'll come around, because man, would he be powerful.
Amen.
In the hands of the Lord. That would be amazing. And yes, Joshua, I am hopeful and optimistic, but
we have Rob Solberg too, so I mean it's okay there.
There you go.
I did want you.
Can you imagine them two teaming up? The dynamic duo.
I really wanted to ask you this, and I didn't get to because I wanted you to answer this for our audience. Can you explain in a little detail for the audience what is the notion of removing the bandages when you guys were talking about that?
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you for bringing that up. That was a cool thing. So I'm going to go into what was going on behind the scenes, but what we were talking about was Sanhedrin, I think it's 98. So for those of you that don't know, this is rabbinic literature in which rabbis comment on things. It's not scripture. It's not something that has authority, but there's some very interesting, some deep thoughts. And in one of them, I'm summing this up very quickly. Yeah. The concept, what's being taught in the passage is that, everyone takes their bandages off and replaces them with new bandages all at once, because that's easier to do, is the concept. And what I believe, and I could be wrong, but I think it's because we were talking about it in the context of, not we, but the passage in the context of leprosy. And there was one rabbinic source that sees Jesus as what they call the leper scholar, leper Messiah from Isaiah 53:3. But anyway, the bandages, the concept in the Sanhedrin is that, look, everyone takes all their bandages off at once and then puts clean bandages on all at the same time, but not the Messiah. The Messiah takes bandages off one at a time. And why is so that he's ready at a moment's notice to go do what he's called to do. Yeah. So he's always in this state of readiness is the concept. And what was funny about that is I had brought it up originally, and Rabbi Singer said, with a little twinkle in his eye, and I know what he was trying to do. He was saying, he was trying to undercut my lack of knowledge about the particular event being talked about. And he said something about, well, had you taken the time to read it, it really says such and such. And that's why when I got up, I didn't plan to say this, but when I got up, I said, but you forgot the coolest part, because I wanted him to know, well, no, I did study that. I'm not just some Christian guy riffing on stuff that I read one sentence out of, So that was that was one of those behind the scenes, like if someone gives you a big smack in the mouth in UFC and you're like, oh, nice shot, man. Here's one.
Yep. I got one for you too, bud.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Professor Solberg, I really, really appreciate you coming back time. I know you got a split and you got other engagements to go to, but again, more than welcome anytime. And I know David, I speak for David as well, but if you ever want to have us on your show or to even talk about, Rabbi Singer, and discuss some things, we would love to be a part of that as well. And just,
cool.
I love collabing with you. I really, really do.
You guys got
me into tourism and and seeing you actually engage with a rabbi, I got just 100 million times more respect, for you now.
Awesome.
Brother,
let me ask you a favor then.
Doesn't me.
Of course.
You got to ask you guys a favor. You have to teach me StreamYard then, because I'm actually been thinking about, I've got a few people that I'm thinking about having on and doing, I haven't done live stuff on my channel yet.
Okay.
Dr. Solberg,
sure.
StreamYard is so user-friendly, you wouldn't even need us.
Okay. Well, once I'm trained in, I'd love to have you guys on.
I will definitely show you. So,
yep, absolutely.
But awesome. Brother, thank you so much. Josh, I know you didn't get a lot to say. Professor Solberg, if you need to go ahead and split, you're more than welcome to.
Cool.
If you
Thanks,
want to. Yeah, absolutely. And thank you again for joining us. Any closing remarks? Where can people find you at real quick if they want more of you?
My website's the easiest way to get a hold of me, rlsolberg.com. You can contact me there. You can click on the videos link. It'll take you to my YouTube channel. You can read my articles. You can find my books. That's kind of my central hub. And I'm not good on the socials, so I apologize for 2 posts in one day and then nothing for 2 weeks. I'm just not good at it.
I've been doing that as well. And also on YouTube, Defending the Biblical Roots of Christianity is your YouTube channel. So if you want to see the debate is posted up there. Like I said, I'll link to it in the description as well. But Josh, do you got any comments or anything about this discussion or about the debate? You didn't really talk a lot. I mean, you did, but at the same time, I want to give you kind of the floor while we're wrapping up here. Is there anything?
I think mostly I just want to give some extra props about the civility of the conversation, because I'm one of those people that's really not interested in seeing blood drawn, but really interested in seeing the way that somebody can comport themselves without feeling like they need to be like, I'm completely fine with pulling out teeth against predators. But if you can manage a conversation without pulling out teeth, and you can just with your head still held high and keeping your honor intact, win a battle in the way that I feel like you did, that gives all the more credence to understanding how and why you won. For me, I think
man,
that
cool.
that makes a bigger difference to me. If you had been a domineering, aggressive personality, I wouldn't have listened the same way that I did to what you had said. And I feel like what you had said had a deeper impact because you didn't act that way. And I just want to say that made all the difference. I think that is going to be the thing that echoes through the mind of everybody that sees this, is even if they can't immediately say, I understand, or I agree, they're going to say, yeah, I feel like this guy really handled that very well. And I want to know why he was like that. That's one of those things where I feel like that was one of those times where people can see the impact of sanctification on a person. For me, I probably would have been a little bit more, like thrown off by some of the things that he said, and would have reacted a bit differently. And so, again, just props on keeping your attitude steady and keeping your countenance steady, because that's really difficult in the debate.
Yeah, it's all about 1 Peter 3:15-16. That's where it comes from. Right.
And I can say that I don't feel like you gave a reason for your correctness. You did give a reason for the hope in you. So kudos, man.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Thank you so much.
Amen.
Yeah. All right. Blessings, guys. Appreciate it.
See you, brother. Thank you again for joining us.
All right.
And thank you all for watching this episode. We really, really appreciate it. Again, if you like the content, if you want more Faith Unaltered, please feel free to subscribe to our channel and check out our podcast. We're going to be uploading whenever the radio gets back in full swing. We're going to be uploading more and more podcast episodes. So exclusive content that's not found on YouTube. You can find us at fireside.fm. I've got plans with Josh to be on CSG a little bit more, to start going back to that and doing a little bit more with CSG. I know you're just hearing about it now, Josh. And so I've been thinking about it. I've been, and I want to do more, right? And so I want to go back to some CSG, do some more, get some interviews going there. David, man, you got any last words, last kind of closing statements or anything?
No, sir, man. You guys covered it all.
Nothing? Josh, what do you got for us, brother? Any last words? Last will and testament?
Mostly just...
That wasn't supposed to happen.
Mostly just no.
That wasn't supposed to happen.
Denied.
Oh, that was good.
That started really with a right click that I tried to get off the screen, and then it jumped into something totally different.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say mostly I was really impressed by the way that he was able to present this kind of not only the historical facts around the resurrection, but also the lasting effects of the resurrection as an evidence for its truth. I think that was really cool, and I really enjoyed that. And I'd love to see more apologists using that as part of their methodology for the resurrection and for Christ, is to say, like, look, it's not just that the apostles said, we saw this dead guy, he was dead, and now he's not dead anymore, and then other people agreed with them. It's like, no, this literally changed the course of history forever.
Yes, absolutely.
Look at the fruit of it, for sure.
Yes. Yeah.
So, all right, y'all, we are out of here. Until next time, I am Tyler Fowler. With me, David Russell, and my brother from another mother, Joshua Davison. Again, if you liked it, give us a thumbs up, give us a heart if you're on Facebook, subscribe to the channel, and share. Until next time, though, good night, God bless, and stay like Christ.
Now we'll do it right.